So this is my 1.6 HDI Peugeot Partner 2007, roughly about 100,000 miles. So what I'm experiencing is when the RPMs of the engine go roughly about 1,500 RPM, really the whole car shakes and vibrates. And this is most likely one of the engine mounts has perished. So there is one engine mount down there, a gearbox engine mount underneath the battery, and one really behind that supports the whole engine. So already really replaced the gearbox engine mount, and you can see that video here. But this didn't reduce the vibration, so it's most likely that the engine mount has perished. So I'm be replacing that one here. Stay tuned. So first thing is to remove the power steering reservoir, and there is one bolt that it's 10 mil. So in order to remove it, apart from the bolt here, the two rubber kind of stoppers, so one needs to lift it and then slide it out of these two, otherwise it cannot really come out of this. Lift it out of this bolt, and then it should slide out. There we go. That's the power steering reservoir out, and it has to be moved aside and held with a tie, like a wire or something. I'll show it in a second. So what I've done is I've put a wire around, and that's the power steering reservoir. Circle around here the wire, and I just hooked it up on my headlight, but you can hook it up any way you want, any hose. So this is kind of out of the way, and now there is actually access to the brackets and the engine mount. So this is the bracket that holds the power steering reservoir, and I'll put the nut on top of here, otherwise not to kind of misplace it somewhere. Next thing is this bolt that holds this kind of bracket underneath there, that bolt here and that bolt there, and that's 13 millimeter socket. So the two bolts are off, so the bracket basically lifts. So this is the bracket that holds the power steering reservoir. Two bolts there, and these are the rubber stoppers. So now there is a full view of the engine mount. So it's got these two things and that rubber stopper that kind of hits if the engine goes too much upwards to be stopped by this bracket, but that's not, it doesn't really go that high. Good idea, I forgot to say, good idea is because this edge is really sharp. It's a good idea to cut a pipe and put it in there, so the hose from the power steering reservoir doesn't get cut from these sharp edges. So I've put a continuous kind of pipe cut, so it doesn't really cut. Next thing is to support the engine. I have a piece of wood underneath the oil sump. So piece of wood to spread the load, and a jack in the middle, and basically slightly raise it. It has to be quite spot on. That's kind of in the middle. There we go. Just slightly raise it so it's just supported. It doesn't move. And eventually we might need to raise it a bit more, but that's kind of okay for the moment. Maybe a bit more. That's kind of okay for the moment. Next thing is to undo that rubber. It's metal underneath, it's rubber on top. That bolt. So I bought this socket, and it's 34 millimeter socket to undo this. Otherwise I couldn't quite really do it with anything. I tried with those, but this wrench adjustable, but it didn't quite work out. So I tried all sorts of angles, didn't quite work out. So I had to really buy this 34mm socket. Yeah, I think that moved. Yeah, it was actually fairly easy, but without the socket I couldn't really do anything. There we go. That's the piece that goes on top. It has a rubber to stop the engine hitting. Next thing is to undo that bolt, and that's 16mm. I don't have really 16mm bolt, but I have a 5/8 Imperial, so that actually it's a quite good fit. Let's undo that one. There we go. It was a small thing that rotates. Next thing is to undo these 3 bolts here. So that one you probably can't quite see from the shadow of the lamp, but there is 1 bolt here, 1 there, and 1 there hex bolts. That is T50. Let me turn it around. That's T50 hex. That is some bolt, quite actually a hefty bolt. One huge bolt. And the third one, finally. And we can take that bracket now. That's holding the engine. That's clamped into place. I can buffer pretty hard, and that's the bracket. Next thing is to undo the old. I mean, actually it seems okay. It's moving quite alright, but I'll undo it just to see. It's quite difficult actually to undo. You can't just there is a small hex on top, but because that's so flexible, it doesn't really want to turn. So what I bought is this filter strap type thing. So when you wrench strap, so when you turn it around, like that, and then continue more, it kind of undoes it. So let's see how this will go. Oops. Yeah, that was pretty stupid design, straight away broke, so don't buy that thing. There we go. This is quite poor material, so that didn't quite work. So the other option is actually to there are 3 grooves here, 1 groove there, 1 groove here, 1 groove there, and basically from one of the sides, just to knock it with a pipe or something in one of these corners. Yes, finally it's turning. Finally I managed to undo it. So you saw the other one broke, so I managed to find a different piece of kind of, the other was slightly cotton, so I gripped a glove so it doesn't slip, and then that thing actually did the job. So I can actually altogether undo that one. Spinning alright. I mean, it seems like it's a bit of a rusty underneath. Well, not rusty, so it's probably leaked. So because these are hydraulic filled, they're filled with liquid, so eventually it leaks and kind of doesn't do the job. So it seems like it has leaked a bit. It could be just water from somewhere else. So let's compare this one to the new one. So if I compare the two, so that's the old one, that's the new one. So they're exactly the same. So this really touch, so they're exactly the same. Was slightly like a half a mil. This is longer. But if you look at, I'm trying to align them. So these two, this edge and that edge perfectly align. I mean, I'm trying to align them so they're perfect within. Let me. Perfect within 10th of a millimeter. But if you can see, this is really has shrunk quite a bit compared to the new one. So if I put them like that, you can actually compare. It has shrunk about half a centimeter or so. So you can well, let me, where can I put it so you can see? Yeah, there we go. So that's his really, otherwise he has to touch that side. So if you look at that, there's a quite considerable gap there. So that's has shrunk quite a bit. Otherwise that's also like a half a centimeter or so. So all the description of the components are in all the components in the description of the video, so you can check them. So next thing is really to clean this and a few bits, and then do this, tie this as much as I can. So the other thing is, this is actually not so soft. Well, it's about the same. So this is probably a bit harder than that one. That's actually quite soft. So use a bit of a methylated spirit just to clean around here everywhere, just not to be so dirty. Next is really to put the new one in, and it should rotate quite nicely. Yeah, it's spinning. I mean, I'm trying to show it's spinning quite nicely inside. It's a bit difficult with the light and the camera position. So I tied it up as much as I can, so that probably will stick a bit more than before. So I'll try with the strap wrench to tie it a bit more. It's rotating a bit. I'll try not to push the engine. Otherwise I'm really touching because the engine suspended. Has to go towards the other side. Yeah, but that's actually alright. Well, I cannot really tie it anymore. It should be 45 Newton meters, but well, I cannot really quite judge 45, and it's on the thing, so it should be actually alright. I put a marker after just to see if this unties, but from the vibration of the engines, if this really rotates, but it's very unlikely because all the weight is on that, so there is no really this to spin. Forgot to say that's a Fabi replacement part. It's actually quite soft. I also have a brand new of these brackets. I have a brand new bracket. Well, just to maybe that rubber will be slightly softer, so I mean, it's probably all right. So there is one position, and this is slightly slanted towards that way, and that goes towards the back of the engine. We'll slide this in. Next is that bracket. Let's see how much I need to raise the engine. Well, not that much actually. I don't need to raise it that much, just about that much. Because that's, if I put this, it's actually, you see how there is a bit of a space between this bracket and the engine. So so yeah, I need just to raise it only slightly. Let's see how this is. It's actually perfect. Raised it quite considerably and it's actually perfect there. Next is the bolt. Probably raise it a bit too much, but that's actually alright. So first is that bolt, next that bolt, and do the spin. Make sure that they spin alright, they don't really cross thread the threads. Next thing is this bolt on top, and that has slightly moved to the left, so I can actually hold in the engine. I can push it slightly forward and then kind of do that bolt. So this thing is slightly towards that side, so if I really hold the engine on and slightly push it towards that way, this should kind of click, and then I can tie it around. Let's see how this would go. Tie those only slightly. And that one, let's see. Actually falls into place. So that was slightly moved, but there is a slight groove, so when you tie this up, this actually falls into place. The whole the bracket falls into place. So everything's really tying, only kind of not too much, and now I'll torque them. So that bolt is 45 Newton meters. That's 45. And these three bolts, that one, and that one, I mean, you can't quite see it. Well, let me put it like that. There's another one there. Are 61 Newton meters. One. 61. So these three are tied 61. This is 45. This rubbery thing is 21 Newton meters. That's 21. Next thing is to put the bracket for the power steering reservoir, but this actually has lifted quite a bit because it hasn't shrunk. So let's see if that would fit and it won't touch the rubber thing. So next thing is really just to lower the engine down, so this will squash slightly, and then this won't touch. So I lowered the engine. This dropped a bit further in, both of these. Now the bracket. Let's see if this power steering bracket would touch the rubber thing. No, it's actually pretty good. It's just actually perfect, doesn't even touch. So the two bolts 20 Newton meters, not 21. So 20 Newton meters for this. There we go, that's nice and steady. The rubber is nearly touching, so it's actually pretty good. Next thing is really to slot in the power steering reservoir. So the power steering reservoir is just first to go in these two holes, the rubber grommets, and then this will be pushed inside. Well, of course, I have tied the nut there. Without the nut, it will be actually okay. There we go. And that nut, well, I don't know how tight, not too hard. Don't know what the settings are, but it's just to hold the power steering reservoir. So for that one I'll do roughly about 10-12 Newton meters and a fairly small bolt. Doesn't need that much. There we go, that's nice and stable. Now I'll go for a test drive. I mean, shake the engine a bit just to see if everything's alright. But I'll go for a test drive just to see if the vibration is there. I'll remove this hose that I was not to cut the pipes of the power steering fluid, because this is pretty sharp. So I've cut a piece of tube like that and stick it in. Yeah, let's go for a test drive and see how it is. So here is what happened with undoing that one. So this is the wrench Nielsen. So it has a cut here, and there is a small pin there, and this is for a wrench. So basically that was the kind of type cotton. I'm not too sure if it's cotton or nylon, but it seems like a cotton type piece. So it was going in between here, and it broke once, so it's torn kind of. So I circled it around, put it inside, and it was torn again. So I think that was the first time, and it wasn't where it's together, sewn together here, but it's on a completely different piece. So this didn't really work out. So what I did was I took this is kind of a nylon. I bought it from Halfords. It's just like a strap thing, and this really held quite nicely. Didn't break anywhere. So what I did was I had two of these. Like, this is a single piece. So I took that one, put it in between here, like that, circled it around once, then put a latex or non-latex glove, any glove around it, well, just there. So do it like that. So this really creates traction and it doesn't slip, otherwise it will slip. And let me rotate a few more times, and then I can actually put the mount like that. Well, this is for is the other way around. Let's show it a bit. That's for tightening, so let's do it the other way around. Move it that way and then tighten it like that. Maybe I need a bit of more light here. Tighten it like that. Basically it's like that, so this goes up to here and then start rotating. That's it. And let me move the glove. So the glove really creates traction, and then rotate this until it kind of rotates. So that was my kind of tactic to do that. It seemed to work. Probably is the only solution, unless you have a tool that really goes in these three cut grooves, but I couldn't really find such a tool. Or you can cut a pipe. If you have the same pipe and you cut a pipe and put a bar and just rotate it, but well, I couldn't really find exactly the same pipe. But that's actually really cheap. I think this was like 6 pounds, British pounds, so that was actually quite cheap, and this is actually really well made. I mean, it's good steel. It's just the strap thing was pretty cheap. So the other, if you rotate it the other way around, you can actually tighten this up, and I didn't really tie it up. It needs to be 45 Newton meters. I didn't really do that. I mean, it's staying on the metal, so it doesn't really need to be that tight. So I mean, that's it. My camera is going towards it's turning around. So that's it. I hope you really enjoyed that video, and let me know for any questions in the comment sections. But that's my technique. If you have another technique, you can share it, and I'll post it. But that seems to work. It didn't really solve my vibration problem. It still vibrates a slightly different frequency, and I really suspect that it's the turbo, and I'll be replacing the turbo quite soon. So this will come up next. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Take care. Keep safe. Thank you.